So let's talk about the time trap. So under the current practice model, essentially you're, well, what I like to say, trapped um, into a preset structure that doesn't favor you. Here's what I mean. In terms of the quality of business that you want to own, you don't want to be trapped into a business that forces you to trade time for money. So essentially what's happening in this case is you're going one-to-one instead of one-to-many. So when you think of services, and you think of opportunity, McDonald's makes a lot of money because they go, one location, and they can serve many customers. Okay? And the system that they're in allows them to scale that exponentially to serve as many as possible. We see over 1 billion served. Now, under the current practice model, what we see is that the model is structured so that it is one-to-one, right? So what you're going to find is a physician can serve one patient at one time. See, the doctor and a patient. And so the doctor is then forced to invest time with that one patient, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The challenge is that the doctor has to give more time in order to serve more patients. Right. Okay. Now, the only challenge there is where else can you focus your time in that model? If you want to increase profit, how do you do that? Well, you can charge more. Unfortunately, the current insurance structure or the reimbursement structure, regardless of where you are, whether you're in the United States and it's private or you're in Canada where it's public, will only reimburse you a flat amount. So your revenue is capped. And so the only way to increase revenue is to increase the number of patients as you see. And so what that forms is a trap, and you end up working for someone else. And what I mean by that is when someone else dictates the amount of time you spend times the amount of money you make, they control your income. And so that essentially is capped. Now, the only way for you to get outside of that structure is to move into a more profitable structure wherein you control your time and you control the amount of money you make. Or you control the amount of time that you put in and you're able to multiply that time or multiply the efficacy of that time that allows you to increase the amount of money you make. Okay? So the time trap is trading time for money. Now, I've developed a practice model that allows you to get outside of that. Well, you may be saying, how is it that I'm a doctor and how can I possibly increase the amount of patients that I can see? How is that possible? Well, obviously, we see that in a pre-existing model corporate healthcare systems are using, where they use what's called a practice extender. So you may see a PA, an APN, or an NP. Now, obviously, in the States, we see more PAs as well as NPs and APNs. In Canada, obviously, you have advanced practice nurses or nurse practitioners. And so what they do, or rather what corporations do in some private practices, is that they'll take a physician and they'll put them in collaborative practice with multiple practice extenders, we'll just call them PEs, whether they're APNs or PAs or NPs. And what they'll then be able to do is see multiple patients. Okay? But again, we see the limitation here in terms of time. Because what we've done is extend that physician's capability by extending the number of practice extenders, thereby multiplying their efficacy, but they're also restricted again by time. Because these patients are being seen in a brick and mortar location by these practice extenders in a brick and mortar location. So that physician is still inherently limited by location. Now, this is a much more profitable model and a much more flexible model in terms of being able to monetize the time of the physician and the time of the practice extenders. Obviously, this is great for patients as well because they get greater access to care. But again, we're restricted to the local geographic area, which also puts a cap on the amount of revenue we can make. So what we want to do is we want to exponentially increase the efficacy of this model without being restricted to time. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to tweak this a little bit. Now, say I'm a licensed physician in the province of Ontario, or let's say New York State. So I'm a licensed physician here. And I want to reach all of Ontario and New York State. Well, there's some geographic limitations there. There's distance, which again is the time it takes to travel. And then, of course, that time it takes to travel is prohibitive because it also restricts my access to those patients, even though I might be licensed in the entire province or the entire state. Here enters the most critical tool in our capacity to escape time, is telemedicine. Now, I can be licensed in the entire state or province, and I can reach these patients in the entire state or province without or by removing the geographic limitation of time, the time it takes to travel. So I now can reach them directly. So in my one-to-one model, I can now reach out to them directly via telemedicine. The only challenge here again is it's just me and one patient. But now if we go ahead and jump back to our collaborative practice model, and I take on multiple practice extenders, now they are able to reach a number of patients without geographic limitation, also without the brick and mortar restriction, also without the travel restrictions necessary. So now all of these patients can be seen from the comfort of their own home. Any local referrals can be referred in office. And of course, now I no longer have the brick and mortar overhead. I can collaborate with these individuals and they can never leave their home. I now am focusing my time on high value communications with them, increasing their proficiency. They're then more able to more proficiently and more effectively treat. And now my time is better spent. The benefit of this is this gives me greater flexibility in terms of time, or the doctoring gives them greater flexibility in terms of their ability to practice and how they invest their time. Also, these patients now are able to be seen. This expands our service area. This expands our geographical impact. This then reduces the limitations on profitability. We've removed the limitation of distance. We removed the limitation of the number of patients that we can see within a given time frame via practice extenders. And so essentially what we've done is escape the time for money trap, mostly by increasing the value of the time that we do invest. Let's look at what the math looks like for something like that. Okay. So let's say we have a physician. Okay. We have one physician. We have 3 practice extenders. Okay. And they're each seeing 3 patients an hour. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing here for all of them. Okay. Let's say we're billing each of those patients $100 per visit. And let's say it's an 8-hour workday with 1 hour for lunch. Okay, and so let's do a little bit of math here. That means we're doing $300 per hour in practice revenue per practice extender. Okay, so it's $300 an hour, and we're doing the same thing here, and we're doing the same thing here. So now, in terms of overall practice revenue, we're now doing $900 an hour. Okay, let's say we pay the practice extenders $50 per visit. So that's half of our revenue per hour. So now we are automatically doing, in terms of profit, $4.50 an hour. And that's with an 8-hour workday, which is 7 actual hours minus the worked minus the hour for lunch. So we're going to do 450 by 7. Do a little math here. So that's $3,150 per day. That's $3,150 per day. And let's say we do a 5-day work week. So it's a 5-day work week. So we're going to multiply that 3,150 by 5. That's 15,000. Do that here. That's $15,750 per week. Now we can see how our physician has not invested any additional time over what he would initially, right? In terms of collaborative practice, he hasn't invested any additional time. So what he's doing is chart review. He may be seeing his patients as per usual, but what we see is the practice extenders, they now are able to see three patients an hour, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. Obviously that 1 hour a day is for lunch. They're not burned out. The physician's not burned out. They're able to keep a full schedule. The patients themselves are seen. We keep higher acuity patients. We save in-office visits for higher acuity patients. The scope of telemedicine practice is inherently limited, allowing us to better triage patients that are low acuity for referral in office or out to other specialists as needed. We also increase our reach, and we're able to intervene at an earlier phase of complaint or monitored ongoing disease states and ongoing treatments. And so we can see the efficiency that it provides the practice is upfront triage. And what we'll do next in the next video is sort of take a look at those, how do we actually incorporate this, and we use 3 stages to do it. So we automate, we collaborate, and then we delegate. And so now that we've explored the time for money trap, what we can do in the next video is sort of figure out how to take this theory and these scribbles that you see and incorporate them directly into your practice.